Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 1, which consists of members 1. Nabilah Raniana Ramadhani with student ID number 193200175. 2. Via Nur Afifa with student ID number 183200048. 3. Dava Tirta Buana Raharjo with student ID number 193200184. 4. Octaviana Mahardika with student ID number 193200195. 5. Yusril with student ID number 193200217. And 6. Lukis Herlambang Syah Putra with student ID number 193200218. In this occasion, in the basic analysis of English poetry lesson, we will discuss the material about the introduction of poetry and the nature of poems. In the material, the introduction of poetry will be explained by Nabilah Raniana Ramadhani, Octaviana Mahardika, and Via Nur Afifa, while in the material, the nature of poems will be explained by Dava Tirta Buana Raharjo, Yusril, and Lukis Herlambang Syah Putra. Okay, without much talk, we will explain the two materials to you. My name is Nabilah Raniana Ramadhani. Okay, now we will discuss the first topic about the definition of poetry. Definition of poetry. Poetry is a type of literature based on the interplay of words and rhythm. And in my opinion, definition of poetry is any kind of verbal or written language that is structured rhythmically and is meant to tell a story or express any kind of emotion, idea, or state of being. Poetry is used to achieve this artistic expression in several ways.
And next, we are going to the next topic, that is the purpose of poetry. Well, the purpose of poetry is to express yourself. It helps you know how you feel and then to organize your thought. And poetry helps you to see the world in a different way and then opens yourself to the wealth of knowledge.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. In this opportunity, I want to explain about structure of poetry. There are 4 structures of poetry. Number 1 is stanza. What is stanza? Stanza is a group of lines in the poem. It is often called a verse. And the second is rime. Rime is a pattern of words that contain sibilant sounds. And then meter. Meter is a rhythmic structure of a poem. Sometimes you can feel the meter by tapping for each syllable. And the last one is line break. Line break is where a line the poetry ends. It causes the reader to pause and will determine how the poem is.
Types of poetry and their characteristics. There are many types of poetry, some of which we will discuss below. However, regardless of the particular type of poetry in question, it is likely that a poem will fit into one of these their overarching poetry types: A. Lyric poetry, B. narrative poetry, and C. descriptive poetry. A. Lyric poetry. Lyric poetry is a poetry related to a poet's emotional life, which is written in their voice and express strong thoughts and emotions. There is only one voice in lyric poetry. This lyric poetry is often used in modern poetry because it is personal and introspective. B. Narrative poetry. Narrative poetry is concerned with storytelling, just as in a prose story. A narrative poem will most likely follow the conventions of plot, including elements such as conflict, rising actions, climax, resolution, and etc. Again, as in prose stories, narrative poems will most likely be peopled with characters to perform the action of the tale. Descriptive poetry. Descriptive poetry usually employs lots of rich imagery to describe the world around the poet, while it most often has a single poetic voice and a strong emotional content. Descriptive poetry differs from lyric poetry in that its focus is more on the externalities of the world rather than the interior life of the poet.
Then I'm going to present about subtypes of poetry. The first we have sonnet. Sonnets are predominantly concerned with matters of heart, and then there are two common forms of sonnet, Shakespearean and Petrarchan. And then the second, there is haiku. Haiku is a form of poetry that has its origins in 17th century Japanese poetry. And then the third, elegy, is a type of poem that don't really come with specific structural requirements but still constitute a recognizable form of poetry. Then we have limerick. This is a favorite of school children everywhere, and the most defining characteristic of limericks are their renewed humor. Next, we have ballads. Ballads are a type of narrative poetry that has close ties to musical forms. And we have ode, another poetry from that traces its origins to ancient Greece. Odes were originally intended to be sung. And the last one, epic. These are long narrative poems that recount heroic tales, usually focus on a legendary or mythical figure. The following devices of poetry are organized into two sections. The first section is sound devices that consists of alliteration, consonants, assonance, and alliteration. So, sound devices are the literary forms that poets use to create sounds in their poetry. So, first we have alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of the initial consonant sound in a stressed syllable. We have the example of the far breeze blew. The initial consonant sound in breeze blow, the consonant B are considered alliteration. The next kind of sound device is consonants. Consonants is the final consonant sound in a stressed syllable with a different vowel. The example of sit and cat. Our final consonant sound in sit and cat, the consonant T, is called consonant even though they have a different vowel sound. The next one is assonance. So, assonance is the repeated vowel within the words with a different consonant ending. The vowel sound is repeated in seal and mid. The E sound, in the middle, that word is assonance. The last sound device is onomatopoeia. So, onomatopoeia is the words that imitate the sound's meaning. For the example, pop, hiss, boom, crash, slap, smack. And those words that mimic the sounds what they need. Then the second section we have figurative language. The authors use figurative language to make the language of poetry richer. The first, let's talk about personification. So, personification is giving a human trait to something non-human. It's like animal or the noun. And the example I have for you is the leaf dance in the wind on the cold October afternoon. So, can leaf dance like the people? No, right? So, that would be a personification. Next is going to be simile. So, a simile is a comparison that often use the word of like or as. An example here, Jamie runs as fast as the wind. So, the sentences show the comparison of the speed of running to the speed of the wind. And the last one is metaphor. So, metaphor is a comparison made between things which are essentially not alike, and it is similar to a simile, but it doesn't use the words of like or as. So, example here, the baseball player was a rocket sprinting to the first base. Now we absolutely realize when we read this, the baseball player is not actually a rocket, and also it doesn't use the word of like or as, and we can conclude that metaphor is going to talking about the things that aren't real.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everybody, so my name is Yusril and my ID number is 193202217. Today I'm going to tell you about the nature of poems. Okay, the nature of poem is affected by ideology, by literary convention as well as social and cultural ideas. Raymond Williams contends, nature is perhaps the most complex word in a language, and the term nature is itself contested now because it seems to assume an oversimplified relationship between the human and environment. Okay, so let me know about poem. What is that poem? Poem is piece of writing in which the expression of feelings and ideas is given intensity by particular attention to diction. And the most important guys that we have to know from this one, poem and poetry almost the same. So poem is almost the same as poetry. So how to make it different? It's just that the form is presented in orderly and bound lines, because poem is more concerned with the harmony of language, and the difference between poem and poetry exists only in the form. Poem also has the privilege of containing lines and verses, where each verse we can write down the expression that we can feel, and we can use beautiful and special words. And poetry and poem also has several functions, such as for beautiful or for beauty or actual word, and poem also serves to provide information or specific purposes, such as religion and religion and others. Actually, why? Because poem is an expression of the soul, so that making of poem is not restricted by certain rules. And here, there we have 12 types. We have 12 types of poems. The first we have sonnet and villanelle and haiku and expressive and poems and concentrated poems and elegy and epigram, limerick and poet and epitaph, ode, and the last is free verse. Okay, so just it I can explain you about the nature of poem or poem, and the next material will be explanation by my friends.
Hello everyone. After the definition of poems, I want to present about my presentation about the types of poem. As we have already known, there are so many different types of poems. The type itself is almost the same as the poetry. The difference between each type is based on the format, rhyme scheme, and subject matter. The first is sonnet. Sonnet is a kind of poem which is originated in 13th century in Italy. The sonnet itself has two kinds of it. The first is Petrarchan sonnet and the second is Shakespearean sonnet. For the example of sonnet, it is in Shakespeare sonnet 130, and the second is villanelle. Villanelle is a poem, but it has more specific rules than sonnet. But many of the lines are repetition, so it means you will have to take care to make those lines meaningful. For example of villanelles, it is in The Walking by Theodore Roth and Do Not Go Gentle into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas. And the next is haiku. Haiku is originated in 17th century in Japan. I can say it is a unique poem because it only has 3 lines. For example, is in Matsuo Basho by the Old Temple. And the next is expressive poems. Expressive poems don't really have specific rules, but they do speak of another work of art. For example, Tahi Bajes by the title Lager in the Wilderness and Rebecca Walsh by the title Ekphrastic. Next is constraint poems. It means that the poet is designed to take particular shapes of form on the page. For example, The Altar by George Hilbert. It was made to resemble a church altar. Then it is elegy. Elegy is another type of poem that lacks particular rules, but it is usually written in morning following a death. For example, is in "Oh Captain, My Captain" by Whitmans. And then it is epigram. Epigram Epigrams are short, witty, and often satirical poems that usually take the form of a couple or quatrain. For example, is in Profile by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. I will say some of this line. Sir, I admit your general rule that every poet is a fool, but you yourself may serve to show it that every fool is not a poet. And then next is limerick. Limerick are humorous poems that have a more distinct rhythm. For example, it is written by Anonymous. The words are: there once was an old man on Nantucket who kept all his cash in bucket. His doctor called Nan, ran away with a man, and asked for the bucket. Nan took it. The next is ballad. Ballad is a poem that usually takes a narrative form to tell a story. For example, is in Annabel Lee by Edgar Allan Poe. And then epitaph. Epitaph is much like elegy, but it is shorter. And also there are no specific rule for epitaph of their rhyme schemes. For example, in William Shakespeare gravestone. And then ode. Odes address a specific person, thing, or event. The ode is believed to have been invented by the ancient Greeks. For example, Ode to the West Wind by Percy Bysshe Shelley. And the last is about free verse. Free verse is actually what it is name implies. There are no rules or specific reason to write the poem, because you can write or do anything to it. For example, is in a noiseless passenger spider by Walt Whitman. That's all. Thank you for your attention. My name is Lukis. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Welcome back with me, Dava Tirta Buana Raharjo. My number 193208184. For this time, I will explain to you about structure of poems. The first poem can be structured with rhyming lines and meter. The rhythm and emphasis of a line based on syllabic beats. Poems can also be free form, which follows no formal structure. The basic building block of a poem is a verse known as a stanza. A stanza is a grouping of lines relates to the same talk or topic. Similar to a paragraph in prose, a stanza can be subdivided based on the number of lines it contains. For example, a couplet is a stanza with 2 lines. And this time I will explain about stanza. And the first stanza is used to describe the main building block of a poem. It is a unit of poetry composed of lines that relate to a similar talk or topic, like a paragraph in prose or a verse in a song. Every stanza in a poem has its own concept and serves a unique purpose. A stanza may be arranged according to rhyming patterns and meters, the syllabic beats of a line. It can also be a free-flowing verse that has no formal structure. This is a stanza. And now, I will explain about rhyme schemes. What is a rhyme schemes? There are many different types of rhymes that poets use in their works. Internal rhymes, slam rhymes, a rhymes, or identical rhymes, and more X. One of the most common ways to write a rhyming poem is to use a rhyme scheme composed of shared vowel sound or consonants. Yes, this is a structure of poems. Enough from me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.